So today we have with us the Canadian Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan. Thank you so much for joining
Oh,
us.
thank you for having me.
So my first question is, you have served several deployments in Afghanistan. How do you view the current security situation in the country, and do you see the peace prospects in the country as realistic? And if so, then what role do you see Canada playing in the country?
As you know, Canada is very proud of the role that it has played in Afghanistan. We were there for over a decade. Our troops also paid the ultimate sacrifice in many places, but we also got to see where Afghanistan was at
Right.
that time. And if you look at where it was, I mean, imagine women weren't allowed to go outside
Right.
without a male chaperone. They were being stoned to death in a stadium. The absolute brutality that was going on. At least with the work and support from the international effort and NATO, girls are going back to school.
Right.
Stadiums are being used to play soccer again, and so that demonstrates progress. And the Afghan security forces have also come a long way with the work that the international community has done. And that even though Canada right now does not have troops on the ground, it's also contributing quite substantially in the development and security. We've committed over close to $500 million
Yeah.
in development and security from 2018 to 2021. And we'll always be a responsible coalition partner. In terms of the prospects where Afghanistan can go, I think there's a tremendous opportunity. Yes, there has been an uptick in violence,
Yeah.
and we're hopeful that will go down. Some of the things we had anticipated, because the Afghan security forces were going to be challenged. But if you look at, they have met the challenge every single time.
Yeah.
They have either stopped an attack, prevented an attack, or if an attack has happened, they were able to retake the building or the territory quite quickly, which is good. But for lasting peace, all parties need to come to the negotiating table and figure out figure out a proper solution. So we are hopeful, and Canada will always try to do its part in trying to promote peace in the region.
Yeah, yeah. So India is also getting actively involved in Afghanistan, and we were wondering what opportunities are there for India and Canada to collaborate in ensuring peace in the region, and so do you have any comments on that?
I think there's a good opportunity, especially in the development aspect. We have to
Yeah.
be able to develop the nation, help build the capacity is extremely important. I saw some of the great work in Kandahar province that India had done,
Yeah.
one with building the road so that trade and commerce can flow. Something that they also understand the farming very well.
Yeah.
They built a cold storage facility so that the harvest of a lot of the grapes and the fruit that was happening could be actually stored and then transported at a later time.
Yeah.
Where regrettably, a lot of them were just, the fruit was just rotting, it wasn't getting to the market. So I think there's many opportunities how both Canada and India can work on the development aspect of things. One thing we want to also demonstrate is that the increase in promotion of education and job training for women as well. That's also very important, that with those progressive viewpoints that we continue to push as two democratic countries.
Yeah, yeah. The Arctic region is now a new era for geopolitical rivalry, and 40% of Canada's landmass is the Arctic. So, how do you see these geopolitical games unfolding, as time comes?
Well, for us, the Arctic region is something that we take very seriously, not just from a defense perspective, but for national defense. And our defense policy has a significant focus on the Arctic.
Yeah.
But we as a government look at the Arctic in a much more holistic way. When we look at sovereignty, we just don't look at it from a defense perspective. So our sovereignty is how do we support the communities, the Canadians that are actually living up in the north, right? Like the Inuits, and I've visited many communities, and have many more to still to visit. We're looking at how can we build better sustainable energy sources for them? How do we be able to provide the right support mechanisms for them? As some of the waterways become more open and tourism goes, how do we make sure that we have the proper rescue structure in the region? And defense will continue to play an important role. We look at North American defense with our most important ally, which is the U.S., our partner to the south. But also, we have a very unique defense relationship through NORAD. It's the only binational command in the world, and so we monitor that space very closely, and we're going to be modernizing our approach as well.
Yeah. So in November last year, Canada hosted the UN Peacekeeping Defense Ministerial Conference in Vancouver, and a number of important programs were prepared, including one on increasing the role of female peacekeepers and preventing the recruitment of child soldiers. Do you think that Canada can be effective in bringing about this change?
First of all, I was extremely proud to host
Yeah.
the United Nations Peacekeeping Defense Ministerial in Vancouver, my home city, where I would say the Vancouver, like many other cities in Canada, are almost looks like the UN. It's a very multicultural, but we were talking about a very serious topic, which is how to reduce conflict. And what we in Canada, with our re-engagement on peace support operations, we wanted to make sure that we're going to contribute things in a responsible manner. So not just look at what we've done in the past. We want to look at what are the things that we can do that can change things for conflict reduction into the future. One of the things is increasing the number of women on peacekeeping operations. Research has shown that, our experience has shown that it can have an impact. So what are we going to do about it? So we have announced, so that's Mr. Freeland has announced, the LC initiative, which is incentivizing nations to increase the number of women on peacekeeping operations. But how do you do that when you don't have this number of women in your armed forces? So I'm working with my counterparts of how do we look at increasing the number of women. And Canada too is doing its part. We're right around 15 to 16%. We have a goal to get it up to 25%, a 1% increase every single year. However, that's not an end state. That's the start. And eventually we want to be reflective of our population and get to gender parity as quickly as possible. In terms of child soldiers, I'm also equally proud about the Vancouver Principles, something that we worked with General Romeo Dallaire's an initiative on how to prevent the recruitment of child soldiers. Something that I think we all can agree upon, but also something that can, if it has the right impact, it can help reduce conflict. I've always said you need to fight the problem when it gets out of hand, which we are part of, but at the same time you need to reduce the number of recruits going to these organizations. And that initiative can do that. So that means better training for militaries that are going in as well, giving the right tools, but also having the right support structure in place afterwards, so that when you do bring these children out, you got to get them back reintegrated into society, and that takes a lengthy approach. So plus we're looking at smart pledges. How do we not just look at a chunk of terrain and try to make it better, but how do we bring in capabilities that can make many missions better? So we're looking at, we're actually putting our tactical airlift into Entebbe as we speak, and we're going to look at other smart pledging opportunities. But more importantly, the innovative training is going to be, I think, quite critical. And where the situation is right, we will look at training trooping nations that are going to be deploying an operation. So that'll have an almost immediate impact, hopefully, with the troops that are going in. And then, again, if the situation is right, we will deploy and mentor those troops as well. So you have an immediate impact, but also when those units go back to the host nations, they're far better trained. So it actually it's doing two things at once.
Okay. So India has, in the recent years, undertaken a massive military modernization process. And in what manner can India and Canada collaborate and cooperate in this, especially in defense technology, because that is our most, required area right now. So
I think there's already it's really good to see that India is stepping up and being looking at the Asia Pacific region and playing a security role and a stable role. So with that is good, and in Canada too, we are actually increasing our presence in the Asia Pacific. When it comes to our defense collaboration, I had an opportunity on my previous trip to meet with industry leaders, and I had an opportunity yesterday as well, where I met with industry leaders from the Indian companies and Canadian companies, and how they're working on joint ventures on how to work with the Make in India policy on defense procurement. And I think and that's one of the reasons I'm also here, is how do we promote that. So there is tremendous opportunities, and I look forward to developing it further.
Okay. Additionally, Canada has experience in cold climate warfare, and is that a potential area of focus for bilateral defense ties?
We're looking at many aspects of our bilateral defense relationship, which areas that we can improve. And the one aspect is winter survival.
Yeah.
You have a region that's also a region that's very cold.
Yeah.
Obviously, so do we. And survival training, winter survival training, is something that we can collaborate on. I think it's a great opportunity for both nations to work on this.
My last question. The Quad initiative involving India, US, Japan, and Australia has recently been reactivated. Do you see Canada engaging in it, something like a Quad Plus?
I think that's already happening in an indirect way. As I stated, Canada now, since we formed government and the mandate that the Prime Minister gave me to be a responsible partner in the world, I have now directed the military to have a more consistent naval presence in the Asia Pacific, and we've already demonstrated that. We've actually had multiple ship visits to India here as well. We work very closely with Australia, and obviously we have a very unique defense relationship with the U.S. We actually have senior officers in the Pacific Command in Hawaii.
Right.
So in a way, it's already happening, and every time that I meet with my U.S. and Australian counterparts, we do discuss these issues. So in a way, it's already happening, but I look forward to furthering that discussion, because at the end of the day, for all our nations, peace and stability, and for our shipping lanes in the Asia Pacific is extremely important.
Yeah. Thank you so much for answering our questions and taking out the time. It was great having you.
No, thank you. No,
Thank
it's
you.
wonderful. Thank you very much for this opportunity.